Paul McCartney was on the beat as usual. Jimmy, of course, was deputising for Ringo Starr, who had been too...
The Beatles story won't be complete without talking about the major eras the band passed through. If you're interested in knowing the eras the greatest band of all time passed through, then stick around. We're your dedicated channel. So make sure to like the video, hit subscribe and that bell notification as we tackle all things Beatles with new videos every week. Everything has a beginning, so before talking about the eras of the Beatles, let's know who it all started. The unknown history of the Beatles. The story began in July 1957, when John Lennon and Paul McCartney started playing music together as teenagers. But in the 2.5 years that followed, Lennon and McCartney, along with various short-time band members, played only 25 times at places like town halls and pubs. Starting in 1960, they gained a tremendous amount of experience playing in Liverpool and Hamburg, but at least 5 record labels rejected them before getting their record contract with EMI in June 1962. During 1962 and 1963, they became increasingly popular in Europe, and then came their American debut in early 1964 and the beginning of their worldwide popularity. To summarise, a slow start, 4 years of serious work, a few rejections by record labels, and then fame, right? Hamburg. Hard days, hard nights. The Beatles' first day in Hamburg was their trial by fire. When they arrived in Hamburg on August 17, 1960, they had no idea what was ahead. They first played at the Indra Club, which was located on the Reeperbahn at the heart of the city's red light district. According to George Harrison, it was a rough neighbourhood, full of transvestites and prostitutes and gangsters. The room they were given to live in was behind the screen of a seedy cinema near the Indra. Lennon recalled, "We were put in this hovel. We were living in a toilet, like right next to the ladies' toilet. We'd go to bed late and be woken up next day by the sound of the cinema show, an old German pissing next door." McCartney said that you could always smell the toilets. Worse, they had to use cold water from the urinals to wash and shave. 8 days a week. Their work schedule was grueling. They never had a day off. The group worked from 8 PM to 2 AM on weeknights, from 7 PM to 3 AM on Saturdays, and from 5 PM to 1:30 AM on Sundays. When they arrived in Hamburg, they had no idea what was ahead. This was how they had to work for the entire 3 months they were in Hamburg. 46 hours a week, with 31 of those hours on stage playing music, and they were working like a dog. They had to play loud to get customers into the club, and they had to keep their attention to keep them buying drinks. Their desperate onstage behaviour there evolved into the onstage antics they became known for in the United States. Their job became even harder when a renter above the club complained to the police about the noise, and the Beatles were forced to play with the volume turned down. In early October, Indra's owner closed the club and transferred the Beatles to another club, the Kaiserkeller, where they had somewhat better lodgings but played the same punishing schedule. The band members worked to exhaustion, and then they worked some more. That was what their lives were like until mid-November, when George Harrison was deported for being underage. This brought the Beatles' stay in Hamburg to an end. The Beatles had worked for around 600 hours under terrible conditions. Imagine, for 3 months, between 6 and 8 hours a day and not a single day off. Yes, they went on to be a star. The Beatles' time in Hamburg paid off. According to John Lennon, "In Liverpool before 1960, we just used to do our best numbers, the same ones at every gig. In Hamburg, we would play for 8 hours, so we really had to find new ways of playing. We got better and got more confident, playing all night long. We had to try even harder, put our heart and soul into it to get ourselves over. And yet, success was still 3 years away." Hamburg was critical to the Beatles' success, but their slow rise to stardom had just begun. Starting in 1961, the Beatles still had a lot of hard work and disappointments ahead of them. Their popularity in the UK grew in 1961 and 1962. In January 1963, they were rejected by Decca with the criticism, "Guitar groups are on the way out." In August 1963, "She Loves You" became their first hit song. They left Heathrow Airport on February 7, 1964 to fly to New York City. 2 days later, their appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show was watched by approximately 40% of the US population, and the rest, they say, is history. The eras. During the early 60s, the 4 members of a rock band called the Beatles took the field of pop music by storm, and their influence on music continues even today. But despite the identity of name and members, the Beatles were not always the same group. The group went through 4 distinct phases: the early years, the pop stardom period, the music makers phase, and the soloist, characterized by changes in the audience they drew, the sound they had, and their image as a band. 1. In the early years between 1959 and 1962, the Beatles were starting a career which was challenging and uncertain. Entertaining the lower classes of Liverpool and the surrounding area with their crude versions of popular American songs at dilapidated dance halls and clubs, they were brash and vulgar. Their image as obnoxious troublemakers was well earned. In one instance, a club at which they played caught fire due to their antics on stage. They dressed as they pleased, paying no attention to fashion and normal modes of dress. This, coupled with their long hair, set them apart from other bands. Yet, in these early years, they improved their musical talent and gained valuable experience as entertainers. After they obtained Brian Epstein as their manager, the band changed dramatically. 2. The next phase in the Beatles' history was pop stardom. They gained this status almost overnight after the release of their first two singles, Love Me Do and Please Please Me, their own compositions. The band's audience had become the world, and this widespread popularity caused many of the changes. Their sound became even better as they continued writing and performing their own music, dance songs, whose themes were girls and falling in love. Because the Beatles were striving to keep the status they had gained, they had to change their image. Each member projected his personal character, and each became a celebrity in his own right. They were no longer hooligans, but respectable, clean-cut and charming. They had traded their leather jackets for suits, and they all had exactly the same haircut, straight bangs. This new appearance, along with their developing music, endeared them to their growing audience. 3. In 1966, the Beatles entered yet another phase. They were now music makers. They withdrew from the limelight, performing only in the studio in order to put more work into writing and recording their music. Both their audience, now limited to record buyers and radio listeners, and their sound had changed. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, an album released during the summer of 1967, is still considered a classic in rock history. Each song, Strawberry Fields Forever, Hey Jude, and Here Comes the Sun, had a different theme and sound as the group explored many new forms of music. Each member was doing more writing on his own rather than with the rest of the group. As this happened, the band grew apart and each member began to go his own way. Each began to dress as he pleased and each grew his hair longer. The new image influenced many during the 60s to dress as they pleased rather than conform to the traditionally accepted standards of proper grooming. The late 60s image reflected a newfound individualism and set the stage for the Beatles' final phase. 4. In early 1970, the Beatles broke up, and the members became soloists, each with his following of fans, not only former Beatles fans, but new fans who had not grown up with the group. Each member's distinct musical style was evident now more than ever, and each produced successful music on his own. Paul McCartney wrote songs like Maybe I'm Amazed and titled his most popular album Band on the Run. John Lennon was best known for his song Imagine and the protest theme Give Peace a Chance. George Harrison released All Things Must Pass, an album which contained many songs he had written while still with the Beatles, but which the group had never used. Ringo Starr's biggest hit on the pop charts was You're 16, but he chose to become more involved with acting. These 4 phases of the Beatles' career show clearly the changes in their audiences, their music, and their personal images. This progression of changes, combined with their widespread influence, sets them apart from many other rock bands of the 60s. There you have it all, guys. Drop a thumb up in the comment section. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you've not done that, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. The handles are in the description box below.